ಭೀತಿ ತೊರೆಯುವ ನಾವು ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಬರೆಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ
ಖಾಲಿ ಜಾಗ ಭರ್ತಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಹೊಂದಿಸಿ ಬರೆದು ಲೆಕ್ಕ ಮಾಡಿ
ಚಿತ್ರ ಬರೆದು ಭಾಗವ ಹೆಸರಿಸಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗೂ ಉತ್ತರಿಸಿ
ಪಾಸು ಫೇಲು ಗೆಲುವು ಸೋಲು ಜೀವನ ಎಲ್ಲಕ್ಕಿಂತ ಮಿಗಿಲು
ಅಂಕಗಳೆಂದರೆ ಮೇಲಿನ ತೊಗಟೆ ವಿದ್ಯೆ ಅದರ ಒಳಗಿನ ತಿರುಳು ಭೀತಿ ತೊರೆಯುವ ನಾವು ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಬರೆಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ
ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾವಾಣಿ.
My dear children, today we are going to start a very important topic in mathematics, and that is the chapter by name real numbers. You know that this chapter would appear for examinations for about 3 to 4 marks, right? So, quite important. Let us begin with this. We shall recall the things which we have learnt in your previous classes. Okay? I know that you have already studied well for your exams, prepared well for your exams, and now you are trying to recapitulate the same things with us. Okay? Let us begin with that. For the first, we shall discuss about few statements which are quite important from the point of examination. So, children, now we will just recall the statements which we have learnt in our classes earlier. Okay? So, for the first, we shall start with Euclid's division lemma. You all remember this, right? Yes. We can state this in such a way that given any two integers, say a and b, this integers a and b can be related in such a way that, okay, such that they satisfy like this. What is that? Let us see. Given two positive integers a and b, there exist two more integers, namely q and r, which are very much unique, and they satisfy the equation a is equal to bq plus r. Okay? Remember this, they may ask you to state this lemma. Euclid's division lemma states that given two positive integers a and b, there exist two unique integers q and r satisfying a is equal to bq plus r, where r is less than b and is equal to 0 or greater than 0. Children, you remember this because you have learned this in your earlier classes also. That is, in your primary classes you have learned to verify the division process, right, where you have written like this: dividend is equal to divisor into quotient plus remainder. The same thing is here now. A is the dividend, b is the divisor, q is the quotient, and r is the remainder. Is that clear? Okay? So, this is quite important question which may appear for 1 mark, right? The fundamental theorem of arithmetic, quite very important statement. What does it state actually? It states that every composite number, okay, every composite number can be factorized or it can be expressed by product of primes. Using prime numbers, you can express a composite number. Okay? Every composite number can be expressed or factorized as a product of primes, but this factorization will have the prime numbers occurring in various ways, or the orders may change. The orders of occurrence of the prime numbers may change, but they are unique. Okay? The prime that you get will always be unique, but they may occur in any order. Remember this statement. What does it mean they occur in different orders? See, let us take an example. See what it is. It is a 42 here. 42 can be expressed as 2 into 3 into 7. Okay, 2 3s is 6, 6 7s is 42. Now, the same number can also be written like this: 3 into 2 into 7. You could observe that the same numbers are repeated there, but the order of occurrence is different. That's it. You can also write it in this manner also. 42 is equal to 7 into 3 into 2, where the order of occurrence of numbers has been changed, but the same numbers are present. That is why I said the factorization is unique, okay, but the order of occurrence of prime numbers will change. So, remember this definition of the statement, every composite number can be factorized or expressed as product of its primes, and this factorization is unique apart from the order in which the prime factors occur. Let us now try to solve few problems based on these statements, which are quite important for your examination. Okay? Let us consider one of the example now. Express 468 as product of its primes. So, you know that 468 is a composite number. You need to express this number as a product of its primes. How do I do that? You go with division, okay, by prime factorization method. Come on, start dividing the number 468 by using prime factors and try to express that in the product of primes. Okay? Let us do that. So, let us consider 468. You know that, remember all the divisibility rules that we learned in 8th standard. Observe the number, the unit place number is 8, where 8 is an even number, which means 468 is divisible by 2. Come on, start dividing it by 2. Go with short division method. Do it. So, it is 2 2s are 4, 2 3s are 6 and 2 4s is 8. So, 2 times 234 gives you 468. Now, observe the number. It is 234. Again, it is a composite number. You can further divide it. 4 is an even number which is present in the units place. Come on, start dividing it by 2. Okay. So, we shall divide it by 2. 2 ones is 2. 2 ones again 2. Okay. We will remainder with 1. So, 2 sevens is 14. Divide it, you get 117. Yes, 217 is 2 times of 117 is 234. Now, divide this by some other number you should try. Why? Because the unit place is 7, which is an odd number, it is not divisible by 2 now. So, check for the next, which is the next prime number, that is 3. So, does it go by 3? How do I know it? Now, you just add the digits of 117 there. 1 plus 1 is 2 plus 7 is 9. So, we get 9, it is divisible by 3. So, entire number that is 117 is divisible by 3 now. Divided by 3, how much do you get? Yes, you are right, that is 39. Does 39 goes in 3? Yes, it goes in 3. So, 3 13s are is 13 times is 39. So, now I will stop the division here because 13 is a prime number. Now, we will write 468 as product of its primes. So, how do I represent it now? Just write 468, which is equal to 2 into 2 into 3 into 3 into 13. Okay? You got the numbers. Since you have divided by the numbers there 2, 2, 3, 3 and 13, you will express it like this, 2 into 2 into 3 into 3 into 13. Now, I can write this 2 into 2 as 2 square. Observe, how do I write 3 into 3 now? 3 into 3 as 3 square, and later at last 13 can be written as into 13. Okay? It is 13 to the power of 1, so it is 13. So, we came to know that 468 can be expressed as 2 square into 3 square into 13. Clear? We will go with the next kind of problem. Observe, using Euclid's division algorithm, find the HCF of 65 and 117. See, by using Euclid's division algorithm, you need to find the HCF of 65 and 117. How do I do that? So, let us see how to solve this. Okay? Write down the numbers, consider those two numbers 65 and 117. Out of these two numbers, the bigger number is 117. Write 117 here, divided by 65. 65 1 times is 65. So, subtract it. How much do you get? 52. Write down. So, the remainder is 52. We know that A is equal to BQ plus R, where A is the dividend. Here the dividend is 117. B is divisor and B here is 65. Q is the quotient and it is 1, and R is a remainder and it is 52. So, let us express in this way. So, it is 117 is equal to 65 into 1 plus 52. So, 65 times 1 is 65 plus 52 gives you 117. So, it is verified. Now, we shall further divide it until you get 0 as your remainder. Okay. So, what we will do now? We have 52 as the remainder here. Now, 52 will be considered as the divisor, and 65, which was the divisor earlier, now becomes the dividend. Okay. Now, divide 65 by 52. How much do you get? 52, 1 times is 52, subtract it. How much did you get now? Yes, it is 13. Okay. Now, verify algorithm. We will see that 65 was the dividend here, 52 is the divisor, 1 is the quotient, and 13 is the remainder. Now, continue the process. Now, 13 will be the divisor, 52 is the dividend. Now, divide it and get the answer. 13 4 times gives you 52, right. Subtract it, you get 0 as the remainder. Now, verify algorithm. So, 52 can be expressed as 13 times 4 plus 0 the remainder. Now, we have got 0 the remainder, right. Observe this step carefully. When you get 0 as the remainder, so the divisor at that particular step will be considered as the HCF. So, the highest common factor of 65 and 117 is, did you guess? Yes, it is 13. So, remember HCF of 65 and 117 is 13 because 13 was the divisor at the last step when we got the remainder as 0. Okay. Write down and revise it properly for other numbers also, so that this may fetch you marks in your examination. Alright, we shall go to the next kind of question. Okay. Here is the next kind of question that we are going to get in our exams. Okay. Calculate the HCF and the LCM of 42, 48, 56. There are 3 numbers here. One is 42, 48 and 56 by prime factorization method. How do I do that? Come on, start dividing. You know the division method. Start dividing all the 3 numbers, express them as the product of their primes and try to get the solution for HCF as well as for LCM. Let us start. So, first of all, we need to divide 42 by using prime numbers. So, 42 goes by 2, 221 times is 42, right. Next, divide 21 by 3. So, 3 7s is 21, write down. There is no further division process continuing because 7 is a prime number. So, I will stop the division here. We will go with the next number. Before that, we will write 42 as product of its primes. So, see how do we write? So, 42 can be written as 2 into 3 into 7, right. Now, the next number is 48. Write down 48, start dividing it. 48 goes by 2, yes. 224 times is 48. Now, 12 times is 24, right. Now, next you are right, it is 2 6 are 12. So, 6 times is 12. Now, 6 goes by 2 again. So, 2 3 times is 6. Now, we will stop dividing here because 3 is a prime number, and now we will express 48 as product of its primes. Write down 48 can be expressed as 2 into 2 into 2 into 2 into 3, right. This can also be written as 2 raised to the power of 4 into 3, because you can observe that 2 is repeated 4 times. So, I can write it as 2 power 4 into 3. Now, the next number is 56. You have started dividing, right? Come on, do it faster. I will also join with you. 56 can be divided by 2. 228 times is 56. Again can be divided by 2. 214 times is 28. Now, again can be divided by 2. 7 times is 14. So, here I end with the division because 7 is a prime number. Now, what will you do? Well, now write 56 as product of its primes. 56 can be written as 2 into 2 into 2 into 7. Here you could see 2 is repeated 3 times and let us 2 to the power of 3 into 7. Now, we have to write the HCF. How to write the HCF? HCF is the highest common factor. Observe the common factors in all the cases. See, the common factor in all the numbers are, it is 2, and no, we have no other numbers been repeated here. What is HCF now? It is 2, it is just 2. Why? Because the least power of the common factors that we have found out is 1. So, it is 2 to the power of 1, which is equal to 2. To write LCM, you will write all the numbers, you will consider all the numbers which have been present here. It is 2, 3 and 7, and you will write greatest powers. Okay? Out of 2 powers of 2, you could see 4 is the greater number. So, it is 2 to the power of 4. From 3, the greatest power is 1, and for 7 the greatest power is 1. So, it is 2 to the power of 4 into 3 into 7 will be the LCM. So, remember, when you are writing HCF, you will take down only the common factors and you write the number with the least power. Whereas, in writing the LCM, you write down all the factors with their greatest powers. Okay? 2 to the power of 4 can be written as 16, and 3 into 7 can be written as 21. So, 16 into 21 gives you 336, and that will be the LCM of these 3 numbers. Is it clear? Now, we shall go to the next kind of problem. We are going to understand regarding the relationship between the 2 positive integers and with their HCF and LCM. So, what is the relation between those two? If I consider any 2 integers, okay, and I go with the product of those 2 integers, what I get? That will be same as the product of their HCF and their LCM. Okay? The product of HCF and LCM of any 2 integers will be same as product of those 2 integers itself. So, in specific I can write like this. If there are 2 integers like a and b, a into b can be written as HCF of a comma b into LCM of a comma b. Is it clear? Now, we shall move to the next kind of problems based on this relation. Okay? Children, we have learned the relationship between the HCF, LCM and the positive integers, right? We shall use that particular relationship and try to solve this problem. Okay? Let us see the problem now. The HCF and LCM of 2 integers is 6 and 336 respectively. If one of the integer is 42, find the other integer. See, here we require that relationship to solve this problem. What is the relation? Just recall it. Yes, you are right. It is a into b, where these are the 2 integers. The product of these 2 integers will always be equal to what? Yes, it is HCF of those 2 numbers into LCM of the same 2 numbers, right? Now, recall the data which is given there, just observe the data. So, we know one of the integer, that is a, let me take it as a is 42, okay, into b is unknown, write b as it is. Do you know the HCF? Substitute the HCF there, right? Do you know the LCM? Substitute the LCM, okay. Now, I want the value of b to be calculated, write down b on the left hand side, transpose 42 onto the RHS, okay. Simplify this, yes, 42 into 8 gives you 336. So, I can cancel those 2 numbers there. So, now multiply 6 and 8, you get the value for b. Is it not quite simple? So, solve this problem, you can get 1 mark. The problem is like this, okay. Read the question properly, it is a big statement, you need to read the question properly and answer it. So, there is a circular path around a playground. Sonali takes 24 minutes to complete 1 round around the playground, whereas Ravi takes 20 minutes to do the same. If both start together at the same point and moves in the same direction, after how many minutes do they meet at the initial point? This is the question. So, remember, when you are solving statement problems, you need to understand the given data, you have to identify that, and you have to know what is to be calculated. What are they saying here? They said that Sonali is taking about 24 minutes to complete 1 round around the circular path which is present around the playground, whereas the Ravi takes about 20 minutes to do the same work. They have started the same point, they are asking us after how many minutes will they meet again at the same initial point. That is the question. To find what is the time at which they meet again after certain period of time, we need to calculate their LCM of the minutes or the time taken by them. How do we do that? Write down the prime factors of 24. So, how do I write 24? 24 can be written as 8 into 3, 8 can be written as 2 cube. So, it is 2 into 2 into 2 into 3, which is nothing but 2 to the power of 3 into 3. Now, 20 can be expressed as 2 into 2 into 5, because 4 5s is 20. Now, I can write this as 2 raised to power 2 into 5. I said you need to calculate the LCM of 24 and 20. So, LCM, how do you calculate LCM? To find the LCM, find the common numbers here. The number which are common in both 24 and 20 are 2, 3 and 5. Now, observe their powers. For least common multiples, you need to write their highest powers. So, 2 with the highest power is 3. So, the LCM will be 2 to the power of 3 into, now observe the power of 3, the power of 3 is 1, the highest power is 1, write 3 into 5 raised to power of 1 again. So, now multiply this and get the answer. 2 power 8, 3 can be written as 8, 2 power 3 can be written as 8, 3 into 5 is 15, 8 into 15 gives you 120. So, I came to know that, we came to know that they take about 120 minutes to meet again at the same point. Now, let us go with the next kind of problem in real numbers. These kind of questions may appear for exams for about 3 marks. So, let us try to solve. How to find the solution for such kind of thing? This particular problem expects the proof contradiction method. How do we do that? See, they have said that to prove root 5 is an irrational number. So, we will assume that root 5 is rational. Write down, let root 5 be a rational number. So, if root 5 is a rational number, you will be able to express in the form of p by q. Now, write down root 5 is equal to p by q. So, if root 5 is equal to p by q, here p and q are the integers and the HCF of p and q is 1 and q will never be equal to 0. Remember that. To continue with this, we will square on both the sides. On squaring, I get root 5 the whole square is equal to p by q whole square. Simplifying root 5 whole square, I can write it as 5, which is equal to p square by q square. Now, what will you do? We will cross multiply these two. What do you get? We get p square is equal to 5q square. What does it mean? It means that 5 divides p square. You came to know that, because p square is equal to 5q square represents p square is a multiple of 5, which means that 5 will divide p and also divides p square. Now, let us consider p is equal to 5k, where k is an integer. Why did I do this? Because we came to know that p is a multiple of 5. If p is a multiple of 5, it can be expressed as a product of 5 and some other integer. Now, let us substitute this in this equation. In the place of p, I will write as 5k. I get 5k the whole square is equal to 5q square. On simplifying this, you get 25k square is equal to 5q square, which means q square is also divisible by 5, because you get q square is equal to 5k square. Hence, q is divisible by 5, q square is also divisible by 5 and hence q is also divisible by 5, which means that both p and q are no more coprimes, because both p and q are divisible by 5, which means that HCF is 5 now. What was our assumption? Earlier our assumption was that they are coprimes. What? P and q are coprimes and their HCF is 1, but now we can observe that they are no more coprimes and their HCF is now 5. So, this leads to contradiction and hence I can say that our assumption is wrong. Therefore, I can conclude that root 5 is a rational number. Is it clear? So, this is how we will go with contradiction method to show that root 5 is an irrational number. Clear, children? Now, we will take one more kind of problem. Prove that 2 root 3 minus 4 is an irrational number. How do we do that? Again by method of contradiction. So, let us first consider that it is a rational number. Now, 2 root 3 minus 4 is equal to p by q, where p and q are both integers. Okay? They both are integers and q should not be equal to 0. Now, what we will do? We will transpose 4 onto the right hand side. How much did we get? 2 root 3 is equal to p by q plus 4. Now, we will simplify by taking LCM. What do you get? 2 root 3 is equal to p plus 4q by q. Transpose it. How much do you get? Root 3 is equal to p plus 4q by 2q. Now, observe carefully. Here we have ended with a contradiction. What is that contradiction here? If you observe on the left hand side, you have root 3, which is an irrational number, whereas on the right hand side, p plus 4q by 2q is in the rational form. See, we have a mathematical statement in which on one side we have an irrational number, on the other side we have the rational number. Okay? This p plus 4q by 2q belongs to q, whereas root 3 does not belong to q, which means that here we have ended with a contradiction, because LHS is a irrational, whereas RHS is rational. So, we have ended with a contradiction stating that our assumption is wrong. So, this leads to contradiction. We have to say that our assumption is wrong and end up with the conclusion that 2 root 3 minus 4 is an irrational number. Is it clear? Yes. So, follow the procedure properly, you can solve any sort of problem given in such way. Okay? Now, we shall go with the next kind of problem. Here is the question like this: check whether the decimal expansion of the following numbers are terminating or non-terminating. If they are terminating, write their decimal expansions. Children, this kind of questions may appear for 1 mark. They may give you 4 different set of numbers and they may ask you which of the following is a terminating one. How do I know that without dividing it? So, you should not divide, you should not go with the actual division. Without actual division, you need to answer it. How do I do that? It is quite impossible, right? No, it is possible, you know that. You have already learnt it in your previous classes, right? We will just recall it and say how to decide it now. Okay? We will go with the problem. We have been given with 2 problems here, right? The first one is 23 divided by 2 to the power of 3 into 5 to the power of 2. On just observing this particular number, by observing its denominator, you can decide whether it is terminating or non-terminating. How? See the denominator, it is of the form 2 raised to power 3 into 5 raised to power 2. We know that any number with its denominator in the form 2 raised to power of m into 5 raised to power of n will always be a terminating decimal. Since it is a terminating decimal, okay, since this is a terminating decimal, you have to write its decimal expansion. Let us see how to do that. So, we have considered 23 divided by 2 to the power of 3 into 5 raised to power of 2. To write its decimal expansion, what we will do? Observe the powers in the denominator. 2 was raised to power 3, whereas 5 raised to power 2. We will try to express 5 to the power of 2 as 5 to the power of 3 by multiplying it by 5. If you multiply denominator by 5, you have to multiply numerator also by 5. 5 to the numerator, 5 to the denominator has been multiplied here. On multiplying this, how do we write this next? We write it as 23 into 5 divided by 2 raised to power of 3 into 5 raised to power of 3. What next? By using law of exponents, we will write 2 power 3 into 5 power 3 as 2 into 5 whole to the power of 3. Okay? Come on, write that. And also multiply 23 and 5. How much did you get? It is 115. So, we get 115 divided by 2 into 5 whole to the power of 3. Now, multiply 2 and 5. How much did you get? 2 5 times is 10. So, it is 10 to the power of 3. Okay. Next, what will you do? 115 divided by 1000. So, 115 by 1000 can be expressed as 0.115. So, this is the decimal expansion. Why did we write this? You have to know this clue. Remember, the denominators of the form 2 power m into 5 power n. Hence, the decimal expansion was terminating here. Hence, we did this process and we have ended with an answer that it is 0.115. Is that clear? We shall go with the next one. We will try the next problem. The second question was like this, right? 77 divided by 210. This rational number is not in its simplest form, which means that there might exist some other common factor for these two numbers. So, first of all, we need to bring them into the simplest form. Then we have to check whether it is a terminating or a non-terminating decimal. Okay. So, let us see. So, first we shall factorize 210. Okay, write down 210, start factorizing it. So, it can be divided by 5. 5 into 42 times is 210. Now, again 42 can be simplified as 221 times is 42. Now, 21 can be further divided by 3. So, it is 3 to 7 times is 21. So, the prime factors of 210 are 5, 2, 3 and 7. If you write the 210 in the form of products, I can write that as 5 into 2 into 3 into 7. Now, we shall also factorize the numerator because it is not in the simplest form. So, let us take 77, we will divide 77 divided by 7. So, 7 11s are 77. Further division is not possible because 7 is a prime number. Now, we shall write 77 by 210 in their form of prime factors. Okay. So, 77 can be written as 7 into 11, whereas 210 can be written as 5 into 2 into 3 into 7. Now, you can see that 7 and 7 get cancelled, right. So, what do I remain with? Yes, it is 11 divided by 5 into 2 into 3. Okay. Now, we can observe the denominator. Denominator is not in the form of 2 raised to power m into 5 raised to power n. Hence, I can say that the decimal expansion of this number is not a terminating number. Okay. So, the decimal expansion is not the terminating number. Is that clear? Now, we shall move to the next kind of problem. See the question. Using Euclid's division lemma, show that for any positive integer, it is of the form 3m or 3m plus 1, but not of the form 3m plus 2. Let us see how to prove this. So, first of all, we need to choose a divisor for this. If you read the question, it is said that every positive integer and its square, you could see that the square of a number is of the form 3m, which means that the given number would be divisible by 3. So, let us check the divisibility by 3 because given any prime number p, we will always divide a square or divide a also, right. So, that if it is divisible, if the square number is divisible by 3, then the square root of the number will also be divisible by 3. So, let us consider the divisor to be 3 here. Okay. Let b, the divisor b equal to 3. If divisor is 3, what are the possible reminders? The possible reminders are, the reminders are is represented by 0, 1 and 2. You know that the remainder is always less than the divisor and the remainder is always equal to 0 and it is also greater than 0. So, that the possible reminders here are 0, 1 and 2. So, what are the possible numbers? The possible numbers can be obtained by using lemma, that is A is equal to BQ plus R. The possible numbers are like this. Substitute B as 3 and R as 0, 1, 2 and 3, get 3 different numbers. So, A1 is 3q plus 0, A2 is 3q plus 1 and the last possible number is 3q plus 2. So, what does the question demand for? The question is demanding for proving square of any positive integer is of the form 3m or 3m plus 1. So, what should I do now? Now, take this number, square it. So, let us start squaring it. Yes. Now, let us take down the first case. We will take A1, I will square it. So, A1 square is equal to 3q plus 0 can be written as 3q whole square. So, what is 3q whole square? 3q whole square is 9q square. Let us write down 9q square. Now, observe children, we have got the square of the first number, that is A1 square. this should be expressed in the form of 3m, right? How should I do it? So, use division lemma, try to express this term in the form of A is equal to BQ plus R. How do I do that? Observe, it can be written as 3 times of 3q square plus 0, because 9q square is completely divisible by 3 and the remainder that you are going to get is 0. So, that I can write it in the form 3 times of 3q square plus 0. Now, let me represent 3q square by m. So, that what do I get? I get 3m plus 0, so it is 3m exactly. Okay. So, here m represents 3q square. So, I have seen that one of the number is been expressed in the form of 3m. So, let us go with the next two numbers. Okay. Let us take the next chance. What is the next number? It is a2. We will square it. So, a2 square will be equal to 3q plus 1 the whole square. It is a binomial term. You will have to expand it. How do I do it? We know a plus b whole square form. Remember, a plus b whole square is equal to a square plus 2ab plus b square, right? Now, expand this in that way. How do I do that? Observe, I can write it as 3q the whole square plus 2 times of 3q into 1 plus 1 square. Now, this can be rewritten as 9q square plus 6q plus 1, or this particular expression must be expressed in the form of A is equal to BQ plus R using lemma. Observe how to do that. You know that every square number is divisible by 3, so that this number should be expressed as the product of 3 into something. So, let us do that. So, 3 times of, I can write this like this, 3 times of 3q square plus 2q plus 1, where here the 1 represents the remainder. 3 times of 3q square plus 2q, here 3q square plus 2q represents the quotient and 3 is the divisor. Okay. So, I can write this in this form. I can write this as 3m plus 1, where 1 is the remainder, m is the quotient, 3 is the divisor. Now, what is m now? So, m is 3q square plus 2q. Let us take the next number, that is a3 square. So, a3 the whole square can be written as 3q plus 2 the whole square. Expand it. You know the expansion can be done by using a plus b whole square. Do it. So, we will rewrite this in this way. It is 9q square plus 12q plus 4. Children, remember now, I will split that 4 as 3 plus 1, so that I can express this by using Euclid's division lemma in this way. Observe, I can write it as 3 times of 3q square plus 4q plus 1 and the remainder plus 1 is there. Okay. You could see here 3 is the divisor, this represents the quotient and plus 1 represents the remainder. So, I can write this as 3m plus 1. So, we had the possibility of 3 numbers, we have checked for all the 3 numbers and we have observed that the square of any number is always of the form 3m or 3m plus 1. Okay. It can never be expressed in the form of 3m plus 2. So, these are the only possible cases. Any square number can be expressed in the form of 3m or 3m plus 1. We have tried to solve all kinds of problems which are there in the chapter real numbers. Okay. You have come to know all the methods of solving such kind of problems. So, the children, remember, you need to practice well on these kind of problems with different numbers. Okay. Method is same, it is quite easy, you can easily answer those questions. So, better try to practice more and more number of questions based on same kind, you may succeed in your examinations. Okay. Let us recapitulate what all we have learnt today. For the first, we learnt about the Euclid's algorithm, okay, Euclid's division algorithm. The next was the fundamental theorem of arithmetic. The next we came to know the relationship between the HCF, LCM and the integers, and lastly we came to know about the irrational numbers. So, these were the 4 different concepts that we have learnt in this chapter and the problems based on the same. So, better practice all the sums from your textbook also along with the illustrative examples, so that you will succeed in your examinations. Okay. Thank you, children.
My dear student, a warm welcome to all for the Pariksha Vani revision classes. In this class, we will recall the facts on light reflection and refraction. We are going to recall the reflection of light, reflection in mirrors, their uses, then refraction of light through glass slab, lenses and their uses, and numerical problems based on mirrors and lenses, and method of drawing ray diagram for the refraction and as well as reflection of light, and lastly the power of the lens. So, my dears, for the point of view of examination, this lesson is very important. You can expect a statement problems and a questions and a higher order thinking questions like HOTS. So, now it is easy to write the effective answer if you are going to recall the concepts on this lesson. So, before going to start, let us recall the properties of light. As you all know that light is a form of energy which help us to see the object. When light falls on an object, it reflects and the reflected light reach our eyes, then we see the object. That is the property help us to identify the object, to see the wonders of the world. The light travels in a straight line, you know that. The common phenomena of light are formation of shadow, formation of images by mirrors and lenses, bending of light by a medium, twinkling of stars, and formation of rainbow, etc. So, these are all named under reflection, refraction, dispersion, then scattering of light, polarization. See, here you are seeing images. So, the first image showing you is on reflection of light, the second is on refraction, this is on dispersion, this is also dispersal of light through a prism. So, let us recall the meaning of reflection as well as the laws associated with the reflection of light. What is reflection? You know that whenever a light falls on an object or highly polished surface like mirror, most of the light is sent back to the same medium. This process is called reflection of light. Then what are the two laws associated with reflection? You have already learnt. Just recall. The angle of incidence to the angle of reflection is equal. That is, the angle of incidence is equal to the angle of reflection. Then incident ray, the reflected ray and the normal to the mirror at the point of incidence all lie in the same plane. So, we have to recall the terms associated with this two. So, one is incident ray, reflected ray, then normal, angle of incidence and angle of reflection. Here the ray of light from a source is called as incident ray, and which is falls on a surface. The point of incidence will be here, I am showing you. So, if you are going to draw the perpendicular, that will be the normal, then from that point there will be a reflection of light. Then if you are going to measure the angle between the incident ray to the normal will be the incident angle. Similarly, if you are going to measure the angle between the normal to the reflected ray will be the angle of reflection. So, these are all known to you people. So, you have to practice, you have to recall again. Now, let us come to the mirrors, the plane mirror as well as curved mirrors. You know that a plane mirror, how the image is formed in the plane mirror and where it is going to be used, all those things are known to you people. So, just recall the properties of the image formed in the plane mirror. The first is the image is erect. Erect means a straight image will be formed. The image is same size as the object. So, object height as well as the image height will be same in case of plane mirror. The image is at the same distance from the mirror as the object is in front of it. As we move away from the mirror, our image will be, so move back to the mirror, it is a known thing. Then The image is virtual, that is cannot be obtained on the screen. That is what we call virtual image. What is real image? Which is possible to caught on the screen will be the real image, and if it is not, that is virtual image. The image is laterally inverted. What is meant by laterally inverted? ಉಲ್ಟಾ ಕಾಣೋದು. ಎಸ್, ನಾವು ಬಲಗೈನ ತೋರಿಸಿದ್ರೆ ಮಿರರ್ಗೆ ನಮಗಲ್ಲಿ ಕಾಣುವಂತಹ ಇಮೇಜು ಎಡಗೈನ ಇಮೇಜ್ ಥರ ಕಾಣುತ್ತೆ. ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಇದೆಲ್ಲ ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಹೀಗಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವಾಟ್ ವಿ ಕಾಲ್ ದ ಒನ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟಿ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಪ್ಲೇನ್ ಮಿರರ್, ಲ್ಯಾಟ್ರಲ್ ಇನ್ವರ್ಷನ್. ಸೊ ದಟ್ ಇಸ್ ವೈ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ರೈಟ್ ದ ಆಂಬ್ಯುಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಲೆಟರ್ ಇನ್ ಎ ರಿವರ್ಸ್ ಮ್ಯಾನರ್. ಉಲ್ಟಾಗಿ ಬರಿತೀವಿ, ಹೌದಲ್ವಾ? ಆಂಬ್ಯುಲೆನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಎಲ್ಲ ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ನೆನಪಿದೆ. Let us come to the spherical mirrors. What are spherical mirrors? You know about plane mirror. It is having a plane surface, a plane and polyester surface. What about spherical mirror? If it is curved, then it is a spherical mirror. Or if the mirror is a part of the curved surface or a sphere, will be the spherical mirror. A spherical mirror is a curved mirror which is a part of hollow sphere. A spherical mirrors are two types based on their curvature as well as the reflecting surface. So one is concave mirror and one is convex mirror. So here I am showing you a spoon. So it is it helps us to identify concave mirror as well as convex mirror. If the reflecting surface is bulged inward or curved inward, will be a concave mirror. So if it is curved outward, will be a convex mirror. You know that concave mirror converges rays of light and convex mirror diverges the rays of light. Here you are seeing, see here the point of convergence you are seeing, here it is the divergence you are seeing in both the picture. So one is indicating concave and another is indicating convex mirror. Let us understand the term which is associated with the spherical mirror. Here we have represented C, F, P and all. What is C? C is center of curvature. So if you are going to extend this curve, we will get a sphere, a hollow sphere. So there is a center for that sphere, that is what we call center of curvature, represented by the letter C. Then reflected rays from the concave mirror will be converges at a point what we call principal focus. Then it is the center of the pole, the center of the curvature will be the center of pole, or which is represented by P, or pole of the mirror. Then the distance between F and P will be the focal length. Then what is the relationship between this radius of curvature to the focal length? Means radius of curvature is always twice the focal length, that is R is equal to 2F. Let us understand images formed by concave mirror. ಈ ಕಾನ್ಕೇವ್ ಮಿರರ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟನ್ನು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಡಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಇಟ್ಟಾಗ ಇಮೇಜ್ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಹೇಗಾಗುತ್ತೆ, ಅದರ ಪ್ರಾಪರ್ಟೀಸ್ ಏನು ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನು ಒನ್ ಬೈ ಒನ್ ತಿಳ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. ಮೈ ಡಿಯರ್ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್, ಯು ನೋ ದಟ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಟು ಪ್ಲೇಸ್ ಆಬ್ಜೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಟ್ ಡಿಫರೆಂಟ್ ಡಿಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಫ್ರಮ್ ಇನ್ಫಿನಿಟಿ ಟು ಬಿಟ್ವೀನ್ F and P. So firstly we are going to place B at infinity, then beyond C, then see the image. So here when we are going to place beyond C, then image, then if you are going to place at F, then between F and P, so every time we are getting image, but the image will be at different position with a different nature. Let's learn one by one. The first is image formed by concave mirror when the object is placed at infinity. What is the nature of the image? If the object is at infinity, then image formed at the principal focus. Then what is the nature of the image? It is highly diminished, real and inverted. See, all reflected rays are coming to contact with our principal focus. They are going to be converges at a point what we call principal focus. Here we are getting the image. So this method is used in finding focal length of the concave mirror. Here if the object is at infinity means, so when we are conducting experiment at our school, the building or a tree will be the the object at infinity, we are going to focus either building or a tree to a screen, then we will get a inverted and diminished image, then a real image and a clear image we are going to get. So, when we are going to find the distance between capital F, that is principal focus, to the pole of the mirror, will gives us the focal length of the concave mirror. When the object is placed beyond C, the image is formed between C and F. You are seeing here. You can compare the height of the image to the height of the object. You can compare the height of the object to the height of the image. Here it is the length is more and here length is less. It is inverted, and the other important thing is it is a real image. When we place the object beyond C, image formed between C and F, it is diminished, real and inverted. You have to remember. Then what happens if we place object exactly at C? C hatra ittaga enaitu? Let us see. See here, reflected rays are going to be meet at a point, and which is at at C only, which is at C only. See here, compare the height of the object to the image, it is same size, inverted and real. When we place the object at C, we will get image at C only. Then what happens if we place between C and F? Here we are going to get the image beyond C. So, when we if we compare the height of the object to the image height will be more when compared to the object, that is enlarged image we are getting. Here also it is inverted, real. Then what happens if we place at F? When we place it at infinity, then image formed will be at F. When we place the object at F, the image formed will be at infinity. Then what is the other two natures of the image? Here they are real and inverted image. What happens if we place between F and P? So, when we place the object between F and P, see here the image is formed behind the mirror and it is enlarged, virtual and erect. This phenomenon is used in dental checkup. So, here in this case mirror gives us a virtual image, but enlarged image. Even we are going to use this principle in construction of shaving mirrors also, makeup mirrors also. So, to obtain the enlarged image of the object. When we get enlarged image in a concave mirror, when we place the object between P and F, you have to remember this thing. See, again I am showing you all ray diagrams. You have to practice this ray diagrams for the point of examination, and while practicing this ray diagrams, you should consider some important things. Which are those? The ray, the object, position of the object, the ray which is parallel to the principal axis, and reflected ray, the ray which is going to be passes through principal focus F, the ray which is going to be passes through center of curvature. So, these are some important aspects you have to consider, you have to remember while drawing this ray diagrams. Now, come to the image formed by a convex mirror. So, here we are going to place object in two different positions. One is at infinity and another is from a particular distance from a mirror. In both the cases, we are going to get a virtual image, a diminished image. Here the object is at infinity. So, here we are getting at principal focus. So, that is when we are going to be draw back the reflected ray, we will get the principal focus in case of convex mirror. So, in second case, here the object is placed some distance from a distance from the convex mirror. Here the image is diminished and virtual. So, this principle which is involved in the construction of rear view mirrors of the vehicle. Let us go to the next topic, uses of spherical mirrors. The firstly, concave mirrors. As you all know, the uses of concave mirrors. Concave mirrors are used in torches, searchlight and headlights of vehicles to get parallel beam of light. They are used as shaving mirrors to see larger image of the face. They are used by dentists to see larger image of the teeth. The large concave mirrors are used to concentrate sunlight to produce heat in solar furnaces. So, here in this case the concept of convergence of light, which is going to be utilized to heat the water in a solar furnace. Because of high density of solar light, we are going to produce heat. That heat is going to be used for heating of water. See, here you are seeing some pictures. So, this is a torch, which is you know that we will get a parallel beam of light because of the concave mirror which is used inside it. A searchlight, then headlights of the vehicle, then shaving mirror, then which is used in dental checkup. Here you are seeing the enlarged image. So, when the object is placed between F and P, you will get enlarged image like this. So, here you can see the small variations and the problems of the teeth with the help of the concave mirror. Here solar furnace you are seeing. Let us come to the convex mirrors. Convex, you know that convex mirrors are used as a rear view mirrors. Why it is used so? Convex mirrors give us a erect and diminished image of the objects. They also have a wider field view than plane mirrors. So, that is why instead of plane mirrors, we are going to use convex mirror. Plane mirrors are not used as a rear view mirror because they are not having the wider field view. It will not give us. So, you are seeing an image over here. See here, it is a rear view mirror. See how the wider field view you are seeing here. So, new Cartesian sign convention for spherical mirrors. So, to solve the problems based on the mirrors, we have to know this. We have to know the sign convention, then only it is possible to obtain the correct answer. So, here the object height is given, which is towards y axis, positive side of the y axis, that is why height of the object always positive. Then object is placed on the x axis, negative part of the x axis, that is why object distance is negative, height is positive, but object distance is negative from the pole of the mirror. Here image is formed. In all the cases you have seen, image is formed in the third quadrant. When the object is placed in second quadrant, it is towards negative part of the y axis. Here in this case, the height of the image will be a negative and the distance of the image will be negative. See, now it is easy to understand. So, negative part of the x axis, positive part of the y axis, negative part of the y axis, then positive part of the x axis. Your object as well as image in the negative part of the x axis, that is why v and u value will be minus. Then height here, height of the object is positive, height of the image is negative because of this towards y axis, negative part of the y axis. See, it is this table help you people to take the proper sign while substituting the values for the formula. So, I have given both concave mirror and for convex lens, here u value. See here the sign, u and v value negative, height is positive and height of the image will be negative in case of lens. So, here u will be negative and v will be positive because it is another part of the x axis, it is towards the right side of the x axis, and height of the object is positive and height of the image will be negative because it comes to the fourth quadrant, it is towards the negative part of the y axis. So, this is easy, you can remember easily. Now, let us see the mirror formula as well as the magnification formula. So, mirror formula 1 over f is equal to 1 over v plus 1 over u, then magnification which is given by height of the image to the height of the object, or m is equal to h dash by h, and also it is going to be calculated by taking the ratio of image distance to the object distance with a negative sign, m is equal to minus v by u. So, when we are using mirror formula, so we are going to take positive sign over here, here negative sign, please keep this in mind. My dear students, feeling easier? Are you recalling all these concepts? Shall I continue next? Okay, let us go to the refraction of light. You have recalled all the phenomena which is going to be taken place under reflection of light. So, now we are seeing another important property of the light, that is refraction of light. Then what is refraction? Refraction is nothing but whenever a light is traveling from one medium to the another medium with different densities, it is going to be bent. This phenomena is called refraction of light. So, that is when light ray travels obliquely from one transparent medium to another, it gets bent. This bending of light is called refraction of light. So, during this refraction, we have to notice two important things. So, that is what happens when the ray of light entering from rarer medium to denser medium, what happens when ray of light entering from a denser medium to a rarer medium. Let us see. When ray of light from a rarer medium to a denser medium, it bends towards the normal. When ray of light traveling from a rarer medium to denser medium, it is going to be bends towards the normal. So, here you are seeing here it is a rarer medium. Rarer medium means medium with lower density, denser medium with higher density. So, when compared to air and water, the density of water is more, that is why it is denser medium. Air density is lesser when compared to water, that is why it is rarer medium. So, when the ray of light is traveling from rarer medium to denser medium, it is going to be bent towards the normal here. Similarly, when ray of light is from denser medium to rarer medium, what happens? See, it is bending away from the normal. So, normal is a perpendicular is drawn from the point of incidence. So, let us learn few more things about refraction of light through glass slab. So, when ray of light passes through a rectangular glass slab, it gets bent twice at the air and glass interface and at the glass and air interface. That is, here once it is going to be refracted and here also once again it is going to be refracted. Then the emergent ray is parallel to the incident ray and it is displaced through a distance. Let us see how it is going to be displaced. Here I am showing you the incident ray, here it is the normal which is drawn at the point of incidence. So, due to the difference in medium, it is going to be refracted, the ray of light is going to be refracted, the angle between the normal to the refracted ray is angle of refraction, the angle between incident ray as well as the normal will be the angle of incidence. So, here again, so if there is no glass slab, so this is the straight line indicates the path of the ray of light if there is no glass slab. Then, so here again, due to the change in medium, that is passing from denser medium to the rarer medium. See, here also it get refracted, then here angle E will be the angle of emergence and this is what the displacement of the ray of light due to the change in medium, and here we have drawn normal. So, this is how a ray of light is going to be refracted in a glass slab. Now, let us come to the laws of refraction of light. It is known to you. People. Just recall. There are two laws. So, one is the incident ray, the refracted ray and the normal to the interface of two transparent media at the point of incidence all lie in the same plane. That is incident ray, the normal and the refracted ray at the point of interface of two transparent medium. So, will all lie on the same plane. The second law says the ratio of the sine of the angle of incidence to the sine of the angle of refraction is constant for the light of a given color and for the given pair of media. So, this is also called as a Snell's law. That is, according to the second law, we can write like this: sin I by sin r is equal to constant. So, this constant will be the refractive index. Let us come to the spherical lenses. You know that a lens is a part of a sphere, a transparent material which is having at least one curved surface. Here, if the curved surface is like this, will be a convex lens. If the curved surface is like this, will be a concave lens. So, here you have played with magnifier. See, Here magnifier I am showing you. See how it is going to be magnify the grains on the tie. See. So, here in this case, so this indicates convex lens. Here at the center is thicker and at the edges it is thinner. We are going to differentiate concave lens as well as convex lens based on the surface. If the lens which is thicker at the center and thinner at the edges will be a convex lens. If it is thinner at the center and like this here, if it is thinner at the center and thicker at the edge will be a concave lens. Here convex lens always converges the ray of light, concave lens diverges the rays of light. Let us recall the image formed by a convex lens. My dear student, it is known to you people. Just recall again how we are going to place the object, where we are going to place the object, and what is the nature of the image formed by the lens. It is easier, you can recall now. See, when the object will be placed at infinity, then we will get image at f, then we are going to place the object beyond 2f, and we are going to place the object at 2f and between f and 2f, at f and between f and o. So, in all these cases we are going to get the images at different distances into the opposite direction of the lens with the different heights. So, let us learn one by one. See, what happens when the object is placed at infinity? So, when we place at infinity, we will get the image at principal focus of the convex lens. Then this is the method which is used to identify the focal length of the convex lens. So, in this case, what are the properties of the image formed by the convex lens? It is highly diminished, real and inverted. So, what happens if we place beyond 2f? After the infinity, we are going to place the object beyond 2f. So, here is the object, then the ray of light which is going to be passes through the lens. So, one is through the optic center, then there converges here. The position of the image will be at f2 as well as 2f2. Compare the height of the object to the image, it is diminished, right, because height is the height is bigger when compared to this. So, what is other two properties of the image? Again it is real and inverted image. You are seeing ulta, right? Yes, let us go to the another. Where we are going to place? Definitely at 2f. What happens if you place at 2f? Definitely image formed on the other side of the lens, and it is at 2f2 only. That is, just you should compare here also the height of the object as well as the image. Here you are seeing the same height of the image when compared to the object. Here when we place the object at 2f, image will be formed at 2f only. Then what are the other two property? It is real as well as inverted. So, when we place between f and 2f, definitely image formation beyond 2f, here the image is larger, is it not? Yes, it is enlarged image and real image and inverted image we are going to obtain from this case. Then what happens if we place it at f? So, when the object is at infinity, we are going to get the image at f. If the object is at f, we are going to get the image at infinity. It is also real and inverted. And lastly, we are going to place between f and o. So, in this case, we are going to get the image at the same side of the lens. It is enlarged, virtual and erect image we are going to see. It is enlarged, virtual and erect image. So, my dear student, for the point of view of examination, you have to practice all these diagrams. Let us come to the image formed by a concave lens. Here we are going to place the object in two different places. One is at infinity. When we are going to place at infinity, the image will going to be diverged. Draw back the diverted rays. We will get a point on the principal axis, that is what we call principal focus. That will be the distance between f and o will be the focal length of the concave lens. Then we are going to, if we are going to place some distance from the concave lens, the object will be formed between f and o. It is diminished and erect and a virtual image. Both of the cases we are going to get a virtual image. So, this is the sign convention you have to again recall to solve the problem. So it is, I have shown you already, it is known to you, height positive, your object distance is negative, image distance is positive, then height of the image will be negative because it is downwards. So just remember all these things. Now come to the lens formula. So lens formula is 1 over f is equal to 1 over v minus 1 over u, where f is focal length, v is image distance, u is object distance, and magnification is going to be calculated with the help of height of the image to the height of the object. By taking the ratio of these two things, we will get magnification, that is also represented by m is equal to h dash by h, then which is also going to be calculated by taking the ratio of image distance to the object distance. Here the sign is negative, here the sign is positive. It is just quite reverse when compared to the mirror formula. Let us solve a problem using lens formula. My dear student, read the question and note down the data which is given in the question. The data which is given are image distance v, that is minus 10 centimeter. The focal length is given, that is 15 centimeter. Here f is minus 15 because of it is a concave lens. Then object distance we have to calculate, that is u is equal to question mark, formula, mirror formula, lens formula we are using, 1 over f is equal to 1 over v minus 1 over u. So substitute the value of f, that is minus 15, v is minus 10, and you have to calculate. Then after the simplification, after transposing this u to the left hand side and by taking minus 1 over 15 to the right hand side, we will get like this, 1 over minus 10 minus 1 over minus 15. So then after further simplification, 1 over u is equal to minus 1 over 10. So this is minus into minus becomes plus, plus 1 over 15. Then LCM for 10 and 15 is 30. Then numerator becomes minus 3 and plus 2. Then after further simplification, 1 over u is equal to minus 1 by 30. After taking reciprocal for u, that is u is equal to minus 30 centimeter. This means that the object distance is minus 30 centimeter, and the magnification is going to be calculated by using formula v by u. So v value is minus 10 which is given in the data, and u value is minus 30 centimeter we have calculated now. Then cancel minus and minus sign, 0 and 0, we will get 1 over 3. Then how to interpret the answer? It is very simple. The positive sign shows that image is erect and virtual, and the image is 1/3 of the size of the object. That means here we are getting a diminished image since it is a concave lens. Now come to the very important part of the lesson, that is power of the lens. You know that, my dear student, power of lens is going to be calculated by taking the reciprocal of the focal length, that is power of the lens is the reciprocal of its focal length, that is which is in meter. The value should be in meters, that is P is equal to 1 over f. The SI unit of power is diopter, which is going to be denoted by capital letter D. 1 diopter is the power of a lens whose focal length is 1 meter. Then the power of a convex lens is positive and power of a concave lens is always negative. So you know that the marking of plus 2D, plus 3D, plus 5D, similarly minus 5D, minus 3D, minus 2D, like this. So this is how we are going to represent the power of the concave lens as well as convex lens. So this is very important in the correction of short sightedness as well as long sightedness. You have learnt in the lesson human eye and colorful world. Just remember it. My dear students, I hope all of you have recalled well and you are capable to answer for any questions which is going to be appear from this lesson. Maybe a question, or maybe a numerical problem, or maybe application level question, whatever it may be. Definitely you can write a perfect answer, and I request you to keep on studying, and please again go through the textbook, identify the important points there, underline them and make a small note, and again I suggest you to prepare well. Wish you all the best.
ಭೀತಿ ತೊರೆಯುವ ನಾವು ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಬರೆಯುವ ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ
ಖಾಲಿ
ಪಾಠಗಳೆಂದರೆ ಮೇಲಿನ ತೊಗಟೆ, ವಿದ್ಯೆ ಅದರ ಒಳಗಿನ ತಿರುಳು. ಭೀತಿ ತೊರೆಯುವ ನಾವು ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆ ಬರೆಯುವ, ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ, ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ, ಪರೀಕ್ಷಾವಾಣಿಯ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿ ಕಲಿಯುವ.